communication from the public? Do we have anyone? No, doesn't seem to. Okay, getting right down to business, the fun part, reorganization of the school board. Could I get any nominations for election, for an election of the chairperson of the school board?
Mr. Superintendent, I would like to place Molly Bannock's name in nomination.
Do I have any others?
I'm gonna throw my name in there.
Molly and Colin, are there any others? Okay, with that said, I'd like to put this to a show of hands or paper ballot.
Paper ballot would be fine.
Okay, paper ballot. We will pass these around. If you're done, hold them up. I'll come around and collect them.
Nice.
Hard stuff? Oh my goodness, I
That's
remember
a
these.
high value.
Okay, go back this way. You're welcome. Lovely cards.
Finish them, just fold them half and
Bingo.
Hold it. Alrighty.
Oh, wait a minute.
Pass it down, please.
Oh, we have to fold it.
Folding is always a good thing.
Spoiled ballot.
I don't know what.
Nothing on it.
Those are extras.
I passed it.
Vote again. Vote really nothing. Those are blanks.
okay, just give me a minute to. Okay, I've tallied the votes, and this time I'd like to announce Molly Bannock as chairperson of the Bellows Falls Union High School School Board. Do you accept this?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Colin, I'd like to thank you for your past year of being school board chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for, you did a tremendous job, so thank you.
Thank you.
So you could have had the chair. Alright, I wouldn't have brought you for it. I could have sat there.
Sorry.
Do you need a taller chair, Molly?
No, I'm good.
Phone book?
I got my booster seat right here.
The agenda is yours.
We need a nomination for election of vice chairperson.
I'll nominate myself. I did it last year. Wasn't
Thank you,
the one to
Deb.
do it.
Do we have to, I'm gonna vote on that, or
Well, just if there are
Any other?
any,
chairs.
Yeah.
any other members interested in vice chair?
I'm going to move that nominations be closed and that the chair cast one ballot for Deb Wright as vice chair.
So we have Deb Wright as vice chair. Can I have a nomination for election of clerk? I was the clerk last year.
Yeah, that's right. You
Can't do that this year.
now. No.
I'll throw my name in there as clerk.
Okay. Any other members interested in clerk?
I move that I forget the language, the chair.
Cast one ballot.
Cast one ballot.
For Colin for clerk?
Yeah.
Any nominations for election of assistant treasurer?
I
Ask
moved
for
it.
a point of order.
Yes.
Who was our previous assistant?
Don.
Don
Was it
Caponcelli.
Yeah.
Captain Sullivan.
Yeah. I'd like to nominate Jack Breyer for that position.
Any other nominations? Can the chair cast one ballot? For Jack Breyer for assistant treasurer?
Aye.
Appointment voting members of the SU board. This is always one that it's hard to get people that are gonna get to the meetings.
Yeah.
Refresh me on the meeting times.
Right.
Yeah.
Fourth Wednesday of the month it was at 6:30.
With the chair's permission, the members last year were Deb and who? You, that's right, that's great. Bill?
And me.
You, that's right. I couldn't remember which capacity, that's right. Okay.
I don't mind being on the SU board.
Neither do I.
Brenda, would you like to be on it?
Sure.
I would beg the chair's indulgence to, if we are going to appoint SU reps, I would like consideration because I have filled that
Sure.
role
Absolutely.
As chair.
previously.
Yeah. So how does that work?
so we have-
We have three, right?
So we have three
Oh, we have
that we're
four.
supposed to have.
You asked.
Yep, but I would just, if nobody else would do it, I would do it. I can still show up to a meeting even if I'm not a voting member.
Be the first alternate.
So I have David Clark, Deb Wright. Brenda, are you interested in that? And Brenda Farkas.
How many do we need? 3 or 4?
Three, each board gets three on the SU board.
Appointment of truant officer.
That's usually the.
You can appoint me.
No, I want you to tell me who you want me to appoint.
Thaddeus Buckley.
Actually, it was the Bellas Falls Police Department,
That's
and Thaddeus
right.
usually
And
filled,
then they,
so.
okay.
And then
And then Thaddeus Buckley's usually the one that.
Just reappoint them and they,
Oh, that would be
So you
great.
could,
yeah, 'cause I did.
so technically all you need to
last
do is name the Bellows Falls Police
Police
Department and let them
Department.
decide who the truant's officer is.
Okay, we're all okay with Bellas Falls Police Department. Colin, do you?
Just point of order, Madam Chair. Can we just back up to appointment of the NSU board? So, did we officially appoint, or because it's yourself, Jack, Deb, David,
no.
Brenda?
David Clark,
Yeah.
Deb Wright, and Brenda
Yeah.
Farkas.
And
Okay,
As a
okay.
point of information, those are appointments as opposed to an elected process.
Correct. I just didn't
Yeah.
hear
And-
officially who
and I was
they
hoping
all
to
were.
heard that Molly would appoint herself as alternate, 'cause I know we've had issues with attendance in the past.
Yes, I will.
Okay. Thank you.
Appoint representatives to the Technical Centers Advisory Council.
I can address the chair on that. We have two tech centers that we send to Margot. We send, about half dozen kids down to Brattleboro, Chris? And then we have, I think, roughly 38 at River Valley Technical Center in
I rounded up to 40, it's around 40 that.
Is it? Okay, good. And further enlightenment, Don Caponcelli represented us at the Brattleboro Tech Center, and I have for quite a few years represented this board on the River Valley Technical Center Board and would certainly be willing to continue that service.
Okay, that's good. Is anyone else interested in representing us for River Valley?
Okay. And once again, for the chair's information, if there are no takers for Brattleboro, and the interesting thing about the Brattleboro Tech Center is you become a circuit rider because those meetings occur at each of the sending schools throughout the year. I would certainly fill the role, although I think that anybody has even a minimal interest in tech education, that serving on a tech center board would be, interesting work.
How often do they meet?
How often do they?
About once a quarter. So about 4 times a year.
It's a lunchtime meeting, usually at one of those high schools,
mhm.
and I was once a member, and it's a jolly thing to do.
What,
Are
the
you
lunch or
interested
serve?
in,
Yeah,
I would certainly encourage you to
Yeah, if you're interested, that's great. So we have David Clark for River Valley Tech and Margot for, is it called Brattleboro Tech?
Wyndham Regional Career
Wyndham
Center.
Regional. I know there must be a better word there.
longer.
WRCC.
Location? Okay.
Appoint warrant signers. In the past, hasn't it been
It's just been
any member?
2 alternate, whoever's.
I would like to offer a motion, which, and I didn't at all mean to cut Colin here. Statute says that you have to have a majority of a board sign, but we have in the past moved to accept signatures on behalf of the entire board by 2 members. It's a lot easier to get 2 people up there than 6.
I'm around, so I don't mind popping in.
Okay. Is anyone else interested in signing warrants? Deb?
Just right there.
I'm just down the street, so.
So we have Deb and Colin for warrant signers.
And I would like to offer a motion, so it's recorded in the minutes, that Bellows Falls Union High School appoint 2 members to sign warrants on behalf of the board.
Okay.
Any discussion?
I'll second.
So we have a motion to have appoint warrant signers Deb Wright and Colin James for the Bellows Falls Union High School warrants.
Perfect.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Set time and date and location of regular monthly meetings.
Madam Chair, I move that we set the meetings for the first month, second and fourth Mondays of the month. Discussion to follow as we get into the agenda too, because there is an item about once a month.
Yeah.
So
Where
but
are we
I'll-
on the once a month thing?
Yeah, really.
Do we want to?
Well, we are setting the time and date of monthly meetings, so I
We're
think
right
this
back
is
where
the
you
time
are.
to do
Yeah.
it.
Towards the end of last year, we went to once a month.
I know during
By
sorry.
default?
Sorry. I know during budget season it was the twice did help, but generally throughout the year, I think once a month is. That's just my opinion. I mean, I'm only one person, but.
Mr. Superintendent, do you have any input on this?
You know, my input on whether we have 1 or 2 meetings?
I know what my input is.
Sure, I'll give it to you. I go for 1 meeting a month, and during budget season, we add it.
We add when we need to.
Special meetings as needed.
I agree.
Molly?
Yes.
I just a thought. I'm not sure which way to go on this, and I would actually like to hear Chris's input, because we are asking for presentations, like the Social Studies Department presentation. We're wanting things to get done. They generally take a good chunk of time, and it's possible that we are not. I mean, I have felt some years on the board that we've kind of wanted to do something and fallen behind because we have had enough meeting time to do it. So I was wondering what you.
So let me
thought
tell you
about
what's different now than back in the day, you might say. First of all, I think that we run more efficient meetings in that, quite frankly, the board oftentimes, I'm talking years ago, took action that was not necessarily an obligation of the board. So we have done a better job of focusing on the necessary work of the board. Additionally, some of those things that we've wanted to get to don't really exist anymore. We used to spend a good amount of time on action planning. That's an entirely different process that is managed at the WNESU level now as opposed to at this level. I think that once a month does give us the opportunity to have presentations, but quite honestly, I don't think you need every year a presentation from every department. Things don't change that drastically over time. And so because of the streamlining of the process, I think that we can sufficiently cover ourselves with one meeting a month with what we've at times had to do, which is this additional special meeting at noontime to get one or two items covered. We don't do that as much as we used to, even with us essentially being at one meeting a month. So I think one works.
No student disciplinary hearings required.
We haven't done.
Well,
Despite the fact that we've had one this year,
But you're
that's
starting.
the one in the last like 5 or 6 years.
Really?
Yeah. So
Jack, you're next.
Madam Chair, one of the reasons we've been able to do the once a month thing is because we, some years back, went to a fairly strong committee structure, whether it's building and grounds, budget, negotiations, whatever, and we have used that second meeting often for the traditional space for that second meeting, that fourth Monday, for that purpose, and I would encourage us to set the once a month meeting for this, and then at the discretion of either the chair or the board or the committee chairs, use that second time, 6:30 on the fourth Monday is sort of the designated time. People might be expected to work on a committee assignment.
Anyone else? So I think what we have just decided is the second Monday of each month is going to be our regular meeting time, and then the fourth at the high school.
Right, and all this is 6:30 on those
6:30,
Mondays.
yes. And then the fourth will be if needed for committees or special meetings.
Okay.
Establish the newspaper to be used to announce school board functions and activities.
Madam Chair, I move that we designate the Eagle Times as the official newspaper for the record.
This is a fun thing we do every year.
Every year.
I would say that with now that
Let me
we-
offer a second, so that's open for discussion.
Now that we are having fairly regular coverage of meetings by the Brattleboro Reformer and one of the better writers on that paper, I feel like it would be perfectly appropriate if we did the Reformer. I think that in the district there are probably more readers of the Reformer, if only marginally, than there are of the Eagle Times, and that's the only reason
Deb?
Okay, although it has no impact on me, the discussion has been had every year
Yes.
about a paper that is delivered freely to everyone, including those who do not necessarily have access to picking up papers in other communities of our coverage area. So the shopper has been one that is delivered. It is also one that the community of Rockingham and Bellows Falls also use.
I think
So my understanding is, and Chris, maybe you're going to answer this for me, that we weren't able to use one of the free papers because of timing sometimes.
well,
when
that's
we
a
have to put
concern.
things
Is
in.
that those as month or as weekly papers apply a pretty significant time constraint.
Yeah.
So
Is there any other discussion? We have a. Go ahead, Jack.
I like I said, I know we do this every year.
We do.
The Brattleboro Reformer is not circulated in Grafton and Athens. The Eagle Times is not circulated in Athens and Grafton. You can't get it. It's not there at the local store, and I don't think it's you can find it down where most of West gets the groceries either. And I think it matters that the paper be accessible to all the communities. So I would still urge people to.
We used to do
consider-
both, I do believe. We used to do more than one paper. Is there any objection to doing?
Well,
this?
then, if we want to go with our annual conversations, this
We
one
are.
generally takes it
Yes.
to cost.
Yes, but
So if we want to follow the standard script,
You have to make it all the way around.
I will amend Deborah's motion to
Oh,
add.
no,
It's Colin.
I don't have a motion. The motion.
Col-
the motion
is
is Eagle
Oh,
Times.
sorry. Oh, Eagle Times.
Motion
I
on
will
the
amend-
floor is to the.
Colin made a
I will
motion.
offer amendment to Colin's motion to include the Brattleboro Reformer as a newspaper to be used to announce school board functions.
Actually, it'd be
So my amendment is to use both.
So there,
Cost is. who's-
I don't have that. I don't know what that number is.
But you brought it up.
I'm just telling you what
Jesus,
the
really used to it.
impact
There
is.
is a cost to advertise.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
No
not
matter where.
huge.
Right.
so right now there's an amendment
My
on
point
the
is, I
floor.
think that's the only downside,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's going to break the bank.
Okay.
Right now there's an amendment on the floor to
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
have us post everything in the Eagle Times and the
Yeah.
Brattleboro Reformer. Is there a second?
Oh, Steve, huh?
So now we are voting on the amended motion to use the Eagle Times and the Brattleboro Reformer to announce school board functions and activities. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
No. Just because you need
The ayes have it.
Just because you need one.
Committee assignments. Educational effectiveness.
Just point of order.
Yes, sir.
I believe in the past we have written down
Oh,
our
list.
preferences and then given it to you, and you just write down who's in which committee, because otherwise I think it's a long process to go through every one. So we just take a card, so there are cards floating around, and write
Yes,
down ours
David.
and give you a list of what we want. That was my thought.
But,
There's cards coming in here.
I need a refresher. What's a CIP team?
Yeah.
Continuous
Action
improvement team.
Action planning.
It's just another act. It's just another name for the action team.
SIP team. Okay. got
SIP
it.
team. Yep.
Right.
Well, you're point the ball.
They're going down there.
I get to be in all of them.
All right. Good enough?
And then what? Just pass it down.
What is this?
Steve, I got you on every single one of them.
Yeah.
And twice on negotiations, by the
Yeah.
way.
That's it. You ready to pass yours in?
No.
Need a pen?
Yeah.
Okay.
How did I never forget that. I always forget.
Back to
I need a pencil. It's the first thing I got.
probably hold back.
I'll do it.
Sure.
Oh,
Because I'm just reading this list
Yeah,
here,
go
so
for it.
I'm just dyslexic today.
Oh,
Okay.
And you can put me there.
for the rounds.
Keep going.
So what we do, send out an email and just
Yeah,
tell them where
that's-
they are.
Yep. We'll make it part of the next board minutes.
We're gonna tally them up and we'll send out an email to everyone on where everybody is.
definitely faster.
Adopt Robert's rules for small boards.
I would like to move that Union High School District 27 adopt and operate under Robert's rules for small boards.
Second?
There's a motion to adopt Robert's rules for small boards for the Bellows Falls Union High School. Is there any discussion?
Need a second for that?
Any second that?
I have some just briefly discussion about that. I don't have a problem with that. I just know sometimes, Madam Chair, that when I was chair, that I would ask for a second depending on what the situation was. So just so you're aware, sometimes it's a little more comfortable depending on the situation to call for a second, but that's at your discretion. So
Okay.
that's all I have.
Steve, did you have something?
That would be you, Steve, I believe. I think the chair was querying you.
You had your hand up.
No,
No.
I was gonna second.
You're just
it.
waving to me. There is a motion on the floor to adopt Robert's rules of orders for small boards for the Bellows Falls Union High School. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Review and approve board minutes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I may. I noticed at least one new face here. I thought perhaps can we go around, because I don't recognize this person. New board member, I'm assuming?
This person?
Yeah, this
Wow.
person.
I don't recognize that person.
But look, I have a name tag.
Still don't recognize you.
Yes, please.
Oh.
We have a couple people.
Where do you want to do that?
Just right after that, real quick.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's review and approve the
Okay, so
board
skip my
minutes,
comment.
and then we will introduce ourselves.
There you go.
Okay.
Review and approve board minutes of February 11th, 2019. They were in your packet. Does anybody have any adjustments?
I would just want to perhaps get a report on the votes on our budget as well, in the course of this or subsequently. I assume our budget didn't fail, just simply because I
Right.
heard there were only 3 school budgets in the state that didn't make it, but I didn't know for sure. Other than the absence of news, which is probably good news. But is there a tally of votes or anything that, Chris?
You didn't know Westminster.
I haven't gotten a tally yet. All I know is all of the board,
I
all our
did not
budgets
know
did
your own
pass.
town, so-
Did all the budgets pass in all towns?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Deb.
Since Mr. Major has brought it up, I just wanted to point out that the high school budget only passed by a difference of 100 voters between yays and nays. So all I'm saying is that the amount is insignificant in that it notices that many community members were not happy with the budget. When you have some 100+ people voting no and some 200+ people voting yes.
Is this your town?
That's the the ballot for the high school.
The combined for all
Combined
towns?
ballot.
Oh, it's not the combined ballot, but it's the one in Rockingham.
And in Westminster, the ballot, of course, says on it, and this will result in an educational cost per pupil and a predicted impact on this is a certain increase on the per pupil cost and impact on the tax rate, I believe, compared to last year. That figure was based on, I assume, at least the state changed its mind the day before our town meeting on the number of students in the high school from 388 to 404. So what was printed on the ballot, what people were looking at as they voted, was the wrong figure. And I brought this up to the people of the ballot at Westminster. There was no way of changing it,
Right.
and we didn't have the actual per cost available in the voting, the new per pupil cost, which was considerably lower, and the increase was considerably more modest than the 13% or so increase that was stated on our ballot. And I was wondering whether it had passed through Westminster because of that rather notable incorrectness in the ballot.
But the numbers will continue to change until probably May.
I know, so I am not sure why they should have it printed in the ballot when it's going to be wrong.
Is it required to be printed on the ballot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the
misleading.
Department of Education is just way behind doing its job.
I think we do not really have a budget line item here to talk about, and maybe
Yeah.
at our next meeting that should be a line item that we can see what the votes look like, and if
Yeah.
anybody has any questions or discussions, we can do that.
Yeah. So sorry, bring that's a little off the subject. Off the subject.
Do I have a motion to approve the board minutes for February 11th?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Mitchell. We're gonna go through and introduce all of ourselves, and then we'll let the social studies department give us their presentation. Deb, you wanna start?
Yes, Deborah Wright, Rockingham.
I'm Jack Breyer. I represent Grafton.
Margot Gia, and I'm newly elected from Rockingham.
Edie Lou Cole, and I am the business manager.
Josh Aberman, I take the notes.
Go ahead.
I'm Justin Obi, I'm the social studies coordinator.
Molly Bannock, Westminster.
Chris Pratt, Superintendent.
Chris Hodgson, Principal.
John Brawley, Assistant Principal.
Stephen Major representing Westminster.
Colin James representing Rockingham.
David Clark, Westminster.
Steve Fine from Athens, and I'm sorry I made everybody go through all this.
We do this every so often, no matter what.
Brenda Farkas representing Rockingham.
Thank you. Let's have our social studies department presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So, just for context, particularly for new board members, toward the beginning of this school year, the board expressed an interest, and appropriately so, to hear from the departments about what's happening there. We went through a process to kind of come up with a structure for the presentation with the particular topics that they're going to cover. We have already had English come in and math has come in. So for those of you that are new to the board, I guess you'll have to wait a while to hear about those things, or watch it on Back TV. But this evening, it's the presentation from the Social Studies Department. And again, Justin has already introduced himself as the coordinator, which is BFUHS terminology essentially for department head.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank you all for having us here tonight. We took it as an honor for us to be able to come to you and explain exactly what's going on in the Social Studies Department, especially because we feel like we're doing a lot of great things, and it's nice for the community to know exactly what it is we are doing. So as I've already been introduced, I'm the coordinator. I've been here for 15 years in the department. With me tonight at the end of the table, I have Christian Fredericks, as well as Laura Tabachnik, two other members, and we have a fourth member who is not at the meeting tonight, Matthew Willis. So just a little bit about our department. I want to first start real quickly. If you look at the slideshow presentation here, this just tells you a little bit about the graduation requirements when it comes to social studies. And so basically, students need, out of their 28 credits to graduate, 3 of them need to be in social studies. And years ago, we felt it very strongly that 2 of those 3 credits were specific course areas. One of which is a modern world history class, and another which is a U.S. history class. And then the third one can be any of the other social studies courses that we offer, whether they be elective or other history classes that we hold in the department. So with that said, let me show you the variety of offerings we have here at the high school, which for a fairly small school, we really offer quite a bit of classes. And what we've done for you today is organize them basically by grade level. And so if I could just walk you through it a little bit, starting at the top in the 9th grade courses, we offer a World History 1 course, which basically is a chronology of ancient history up until around the year 1450 to 1500, which is basically the end of the Middle Ages in Europe and the beginning of trade networks throughout the world. And the other course offering for ninth graders is an AP Human Geography course, which we adopted several years ago to stay competitive with other schools around the country, which is, as an AP, it's a college level course with ninth graders. I'm going to spend a little more time on AP courses in just a few moments. So if you have questions on that, I'll ask you to hold them. Moving on to 10th grade, we have three options here. World History 2 is a piggyback off of World History 1. So that one will start around that 1450 to 1500 time period and come up until modern times. Again, it's a global class, so we're looking not just at European history, but really what's happening around the world, major themes and historical events. World Cultures is more of a hands-on version of modern history, where a lot of students who, if history and dates and things like that is not their forte, this is a way to look through specific geographical locations and themes as to what's going on basically throughout the 20th and 21st century. And then the third course up there is AP World History, which is the entire history of the world, as much as we can cover it, for sophomores, which matches what the rest of the country is doing. Moving on to the 11th grade course selection for the, just to say that the 10th grade classes pretty much cover that modern world history I mentioned early on. And so the 11th grade classes would capture that U.S. history. So we have options of the AP U.S. history down there at the bottom, and then the other two, one is the one that says U.S. history, with sometimes we have an honors option in there, is more of an overview of U.S. history, so it's not as intense of a course as the AP. And then the other course, the top one on that list, is American Studies, which is offered with our English department. And so we have an English teacher and a social studies teacher combining literature and writing skills, matching up with history. And so that also can have an honors component with it as well.
And that's a year-long course. So it's a 2-credit course. So you, in that, as an 11th grader, and again, sometimes 12th graders take it as well, you can get your English credit and your history credit through that course.
And then moving on to our elective courses, up on the top right, we have several courses that we offer to juniors and seniors as they start to think about that third social studies class, or many of them take a 4th or 5th because they enjoy the content. The top, we have a psychology, which also incorporates sociology themes as well. 20th century history through film. That's a modern world history class, which differentiates through the medium of film. So the students are learning history, but if reading specific histories or the traditional lecture is not really an easy thing for students, sometimes seeing it visually, we've seen some success there. Senior seminar, this is more of a teacher/student discretion as to what that course offers. I'm going to let Laura real quickly speak to that because she's currently teaching that.
Yep, that's an elective where we look at controversial issues that are happening in the United States, and it's really student driven. So controversial issues in the past, you might think of abortion or the death penalty, but some more current issues have come to light. This past semester we looked at the opiate crisis. We looked at the affirmative action case that was at Harvard. We looked at whether or not trans people have rights in the Constitution. So lots of things that are controversial in the media and in our country now. We look at, and the whole point is for them to look at multiple perspectives, many perspectives, not just 2 perspectives, but get the whole spectrum of perspectives. And then the products in that class are very different than usual. Sometimes we'll have debates, Socratic seminars where we have guided discussions, but students come to the product, the culminating product, with multiple perspectives and don't know which perspective they're going to have to stress. Sometimes in a debate they just pick out of a hat. So even if they might have some pretty staunch opinions about an issue, they might need to debate the opposite way. It's a really great way for them to learn how to discuss hard things and see things from someone else's perspective. So, yeah.
A question, and I don't know whether it applies here, but in the past we've had many students take a junior year abroad through the Rotary Foundation, like our kids, or a number of travel opportunities which have taken students away for half or maybe all of junior year. And clearly getting a broad exposure to other cultures in the world. Is there a way of them getting credit through any of these elective courses for them?
Well, I'll speak to that. Really what happens is the guidance department works with not just social studies, but with all of the departments. That question really needs to be covered, because generally it's a year abroad. So guidance will work with the family and the program that they're going with to figure out how to attend to the credit. And without being able to be specific, sometimes they definitely take an outside the box approach to acquiring that credit, but it does need to be, have as much concrete backup as you can have. So and each one of them is unique. So one would not necessarily simply get social studies credit for that experience abroad. It would have to be a little bit more detailed than that. So.
Okay.
Sure, Mr. Breyer.
I like these courses, but I do want to share something that a couple of outgoing board members have shared with me, and that my community has shared with me sort of loudly recently, and that is the need for civics education and possibly creating at least a one semester course. Whether or not it even should be mandatory was part of the discussion due to the level of basic political illiteracy that we see not only among people in communities across the country, but both Montpelier and Washington, it would seem, really have no basic idea as to how stuff is supposed to work and what citizens' rights are, how they can participate in government, and just the basic mechanics of it. And it would be something that hopefully it wouldn't take a whole year to go through, but it certainly does merit a dedicated time, and it's missing in this curriculum.
So several years back, I would say probably maybe 8 years or so, we had a political science course that covered a lot of civics and things along those lines. And due to declining enrollment in the course, we had to invent other ways to incorporate civics. So what we have done since then is incorporated it into other classes. So for instance, the U.S. history courses all have civics components to them, as well as even the world history courses. It's more from a global sense, but there's comparisons to the United States government as well throughout. I agree that it would be nice to have an entire course going along with that. We can try to entertain it. It all depends on enrollment and what students are interested.
Speak to that a little bit.
Sure,
as well.
absolutely.
There's the national standards that are being adopted by Vermont as well, are the
Yep.
3 C's, and it's college, career, and civic life. And a big component of that new curriculum is not just learning about history. It's about learning about history, attaching it to your community, and then taking a stand. So I can tell you that a lot of the opportunities, and not every class that we're offering, that's a plus and a minus, because there's so much diversity up there that we can differentiate for so many different learners. But in many of these classes, there are components, whether or not it's the culminating product, that ask kids to stand up and take a stand, figure out what their rights are, and actually learn from history and say how can they make a change in their community. That's one thing when we were thinking about this presentation, we were thinking about the wish list of what we would want to ask for in the future is ways to incorporate the community and case studies in our communities so that we can take civic action. And I think that the curriculum is headed in that direction no matter what.
I mean, the reason it came up for me, in addition to coming up on the outside of our town meeting, was because I ended up getting a conversation with 4 seniors from this school, and they were talking about a petition, and they really were feeling like they didn't know how to do it. And I thought, well, they should absolutely know how to do it. This is very basic stuff, and one of them wasn't sure when they could register to vote, and that also felt very basic. So this is the reason why it feels to me that maybe this is something that people shouldn't be able to opt out of, but we need to make certain that the literateness is a fundamental requirement.
One of the things also that I can speak to, especially in senior seminars, one of the things that, like you said, across our country, not knowing how to act is they're really learning how to have discussions about hard issues. That's certainly happening, and looking at our life as a global life instead. But another thing that we're doing in the department is looking into diversity curriculum with the new diversity committee happening in the district. We were looking at media literacy, and I think you're absolutely right, civic life needs to be a part of that. And also we were talking with the math department about financial literacy, but ways in which we can enrich our students' lives so that they can go out and be global citizens of the world.
All right.
So just to finish up with our courses, economics consists of macro and microeconomics. World geography is an elective, which would be different from the AP human geography. And then new this year, what we've added is the 12th grade, which is the AP comparative government. And so for those of you who might have had students go through this school several years back, we used to have an AP European history, but that one was sort of a dying breed, if you will. Across the country, that course had seen declining enrollment in our school was no exception to that. And so, again, this is one of Laura's classes that she, when she came to our school a couple of years ago, thought that she could build this class dealing with ideas of working with governments throughout the world. And so, in its pilot year, so far we're seeing some success there. So that's our newest course on there. So what I'd like to talk about next real quickly, or as quick as I can for you, is the importance of our advanced placement courses. I think this is really what makes our department shine in the sense of really pushing students to their capabilities, as well as it makes our students extremely competitive with other schools across the country. So, you know, whether you're a big school in Texas or Florida, where students have a lot more options to take these, for a small school in Vermont to offer 4 social studies AP courses is a pretty amazing thing. And so each of the members of our department teaches one of them. So Kristen teaches the AP Human Geography course, which she started in 2015-2016 year. I teach the AP World History course. Matthew Willis teaches the 11th grade US History. And Laura has taken, as I mentioned, the comparative government over this year. And so just to kind of show you our successes, just to explain how our students measure up nationally, there's a 5-point scale on the AP's score. A 3, 4, or 5 will be considered passing credit. So obviously 5 is the ultimate goal. About 10% of the population on average get that, who take the test. And then a little bit more would get 4, 3, and then 2 and 1 would not get credit for college, depending on the college. And so looking at where we were historically, I just threw in here that we've had a lot of success even though we didn't have very high numbers in the AP European course. That was taught by Craig Divis, who was here for for about 12 or 13 years. And so lots of success early on. Again, what we're looking for really are to get 3s, 4s, and 5s, and pretty much that's what happened there. And looking at what we've compiled here are our average scores per year versus the average Vermont score, and then the average global score. And the global score is exactly that. There are students who will take international exams throughout the world in all of these topics. And so as you can see, in all categories, the AP European score exceeded what was going on globally as well as in the state. Moving further to tests. So this is our APUS score. Scores again. What we're looking for, our hope is to get 3, 4s, and 5s. I can share this stuff with folks a little bit later if you really want to look at the numbers. But I think if we look specifically at averages, that's going to give you a really good idea over the last 5 years as to how we've been doing. And so, for the most part, in the APUS class, we are close to or above the global score, and depending on certain years, right around where Vermont is, maybe a little bit under on a couple of them, but still pretty competitive with the rest of Vermont, as well as the global score. Moving on to the next course. This is the World History class. Over the last 5 years. Again, this one is for sophomores. And what again, our goal is 3, 4s, and 5s. And for the most part, our students do fairly well at achieving that. If we look at specific statistics here, really above the average global score, and over the years have exceeded expectations over the Vermont scores too. So again, extremely competitive with what our students are doing compared to everybody else taking the test. And if I could take a moment just from my own inside knowledge, in the World History test last year, there were 202,000 students who took the test across the country and throughout the world. And so for our students to average a 4 is extremely well. And so I don't have the numbers for all of the tests, but the U.S. history is also close to around 200,000. The next one I'll show you is human geography, which is a little bit newer course and geared toward freshmen. And so this one in particular is something that separates us from most other schools in Vermont. I believe there's only 1 or 2 other Vermont schools that even offer an AP course for freshmen. And as you can see, what Kristen has been able to do here is not only prepare her students extremely well for learning the material, but if you look particularly at this past year in 2018, where we have 7 5s, which is, you know, extremely well, 5 4s and a 3. That's, again, a testament to the way she's able to prepare them. And so if you can notice again, we are pretty close to, and by 2018, really competitive compared to a lot of the other scores out there.
Justin, I can speak to some numbers.
Oh, sure.
So in 2014, 137,000 kids took the AP exam for human geography, and by the time we got to 2018, it was over 218,000. So the course is growing nationally and internationally. It's being offered more in more places. So it's just a fast-growing class.
Question?
Oh, sure.
Great opportunities, obviously, for students, and
Absolutely.
and well taught here because they're doing well. And I know it's particularly with human geography, getting a lot of students to take it. How do you get students to consider taking these AP courses? Because clearly it's a reach.
Absolutely.
So what is the process for encouraging students, particularly freshmen coming in, or even later?
So I go down to the middle school and I speak with the students who are interested in taking the class. I explain the summer assignment that they have to do, offer up opportunities for them to email me or meet with me if they have questions throughout the summer while they're working on it. I'm in contact with the middle school teachers. I also try to reach out to any students who don't come from our middle school as well, so that way they have contact with me before they come and take the course.
One of the challenges, though, along those lines is well, let me first answer that question from an entry point. Besides the outreach that we do, I say that our middle school does a good job of supporting, a particular cohort that strives for academic excellence. So I mean, honestly, there are sometimes that we get those recommendations, and then based on the conversation, there's a little bit of concern whether or not they're prepared. It's easier to know once we've had them for a year to not only know if they have the potential to be successful there, but to prepare them better because we've had them. We can support the kind of preparation it takes. Maybe if you didn't take an AP course as a ninth grader, to take one later on. So I think I have seen really for the past few years this somewhat hard-charging cohort coming in our doors. Again, in some instances, there's a little concern as to whether they're going to be ready for that. So I think it's a combination of things.
And how do you deal with the senior year sort of, there's a lot of competition for one's interests.
Yeah.
And yet you wish them to still be dedicated and to press forward even in spring semester of senior year when they're already gotten into college or whatever. It would seem to challenge with all the opportunities available to a senior, extracurricular and curricular.
Our biggest tact, our greatest strategy for that is have Laura Tabochnik teach that class, and then everybody's going to want to take it. No pressure, by the way.
Just a few things with that. So Laura has spoken with several junior classes already to continue the recruitment. But the other thing that we're noticing, and it's not just in the AP courses, we have a very high number of seniors taking 1, 2, and sometimes 3 social studies classes. So just because the requirement says 3 social studies classes, we're seeing a variety of seniors taking the electives. So for instance, this year we have over 50 students over the 2 semesters enrolled in psychology and sociology.
It's a very popular class.
We have in the senior seminar, I think we had close to 20 students in the first semester take that class. In the film class we have 12 currently, which hadn't run for a few years, but last year we had 16, and so that one is coming back to it. And so the more that the word is out there, students are taking them. You know, some kids could take a lesser academic class, but they are actually pushing themselves with our department, and I think that is definitely a strength of ours as we continue forward. Yes, Mr. Clark.
Well, those of us sitting around the table that remember a few years ago when we sought to get our New England Association of Schools and Colleges accreditation back will recall, I think, that one of the recommendations from NEASC was that we increase our participation in AP classes. So I'm very curious, Justin, as to what sort of percentages we're seeing of freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors taking AP classes.
Can I speak to that for a moment? I don't, and you may have the actual numbers. Well, I don't have a number to share with you, David. There is this ongoing tracking of that by the College Board that results in awards. I forget the name of the award that we got 2 or 3 years
in a row.
Yeah, 2 years in a row, which is an award based on an increased percentage of students from your student body taking AP. And that's a very, as I was told by the College Board, that's a difficult award to win the first time, even harder to win the second time. And that wasn't that many years ago that we got that award. So what that tells you is we did pay attention to that recommendation from NEASC and did so rather successfully.
Well, Chris, I think part of the criteria for the second year's award was not only did you have to improve your scoring, but you needed to improve the size of the cohort taking the exams.
Both.
And there is absolutely no doubt that both of those represent exemplary performance.
Yeah.
And I'm not questioning the ability at all of the department to deliver excellent education. I think we can say that right across all of the curriculums. But I am curious as to how we are doing in terms of continuing to push the cohort a little bit harder to perform a little bit higher. So we don't necessarily need to have the numbers tonight, but I think at some point it would be nice for this board to have a sense of just how we're doing, because I think Deb Wright very correctly pointed out here that there has been some pushback against the high school budget, and I think it's important to be able to demonstrate to the voters and the taxpayers what it is they're buying and why it represents excellent values. That's what I'm asking the question.
So I can get that information for you.
If I could just add to the initial question, one of the things that you'll notice is the amount of students that tend, and this goes back to a previous question as well, we don't have as high numbers in the senior level AP as we do in, say, the freshman level AP. Because, again, seniors, and there's a lot of other things going on. But we're also, the junior and senior courses are up against other AP courses that the school offers. So, for instance, calculus, AP English, biology. You know, there are other ones that where sometimes due to scheduling in the 4x4 block, kids have to make a choice.
I was going to speak to that as well. It's like a curse and a blessing. There are so many wonderful AP courses offered in the curriculums all over the school that once kids become juniors and seniors, they're kind of driven to a certain academic area. So when I went in and spoke to some juniors about taking my course next year, some of them are taking AP Physics, but are going to sign up for some electives because they still wanted to be in the Social Studies department, but had to decide which AP course they were going to take. So some of that is interest-driven as well.
I want to be very clear here. I'm not picking on picking on social studies, and I think maybe really what my question should have been is how are we doing AP-wise across the curriculums? Because it's an absolutely valid point that you may have kids who would do very well in your department who are already committed to AP in another department, and I think it's total kids taking AP divided by total population, or maybe it's the other way around when you're doing percentages. And what do those numbers look like? And what's the trend line look like over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years? That's the sort of thing that I think that boards should know about.
Yeah, I can get that for you. The other thing to keep in mind from a practical perspective, now I'm speaking as a dad of a number of students who have gone through the AP courses. When you're thinking about the courses, it's not just about your interest, but it's also about what will I be able to do with that at the colleges I'm going to. So most college have some sort of limit by content of how many credits you can access. So by the time you get to your 4th AP Social Studies class, that's something that gets factored in. So,
but in addition to maybe it might not take all the credits, it still, I think, helps with the process of acceptance. Sure. So you throw that on a college application,
right?
And it looks really good.
Jack had a question.
Oh, sure. Sorry, John.
No, just was in this discussion. I just think that it's tangentially germane, but it's germane to the larger academics, and I think that maybe that could be an agenda item for a broader discussion at a future time.
The answer to David's question.
And just sort of the broad statistical issue of how is AP working, how what's the sort of distribution of AP versus non-AP versus classes that maybe are folks that are a little less engaged in the process, just get some idea as to what this all looks like.
Right. You bring up a good point because we are about 33 minutes into a 30-minute presentation, so I'm going to let you continue on.
Just to show you the other scores. Was that all? Okay. Oh, right. I don't have Laura's up because they haven't taken it yet. So we take the exams in May, and so we're looking to hopefully do well. One other thing I'm going to mention with the AP is one thing that the College Board has done is they've really aligned themselves very well with college professors and the expectations that students are to take when it comes to college. So in addition to content, I'll speak to my own for a moment. It's not just the fact that the students are learning world history, but we also have 9 specific what we call historical thinking skills. And throughout the process of the year, in addition to learning the material, they're getting these specific skills that are not only going to help them in social studies classes, but in basic forms of writing and reading and things of that nature too. So as we moved our way through the PBGR method over the last few years, what we found is it lines up perfectly with what the expectations are with the College Board and what colleges are expecting. So our students are leaving very prepared. So, just a few other things real quickly. We've sort of touched upon most of this, but just the strengths that I could just explain again, with the size of our school and the fact that the students are really taking advantage of the opportunities that they have, and I hopefully can get some numbers at some point, but with the amount of seniors this year who have taken elective courses is, you know, a real lot compared to the fact that we don't have 4 required social studies credits. And I think a lot of that is due to interest, but it's also due to the fact that we've made connections throughout the previous years, and they're looking to take social studies courses because A, they're enjoyable, B, they're learning, and C, they know they're going to get something in the long run out of it. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And just, we didn't want to write down everything, but a few of the things that we do, we try to differentiate as much as we can throughout the social studies curriculum. And so depending on the class, you'll have a variety of different types of hands-on learning, as well as project-based learning. So whether it be research, position papers, video projects, we'll do things between mock trials, Harkness discussions, Socratic seminars, debates, different symposiums, constructed dialogues, lots of technology infused with lessons, social experiments.
Nothing that's going to leave a mark, though.
Yeah. So you name it, and we're pretty much doing it. And what we find is that the students, again, are getting a lot out of it. We are really trying to not only prepare them with the content, but like I said, with skills that they're going to take beyond their years here at Bellows Falls Union High School. And so one of the last things I have here, just to show you what we've done with PBGRs. I don't know if proficiency-based grading requirements are things that everybody on the board is familiar with. But I just wanted to show you how we've incorporated them. And so what we've done is we've chosen 2 different courses and and we're going to pretty much show you how we do that with our classes. So we took the World History 1 course, which is a 9th grade course in history. And we broke it into 3 categories of social studies proficiencies, skill-based proficiencies, and then the 3rd one, which we call citizenship. And so looking at the social studies proficiencies, basically we're looking at the 4 major categories that you would find in history courses: government systems, economics, relations, society and culture, as well as geography. And so we're incorporating all of those themes into that course, and our assignments are geared around that. As far as skills, you can see them here. We look at cause and effect, point of view, interpreting historical documents, primary source and secondary source documents, identifying places on a map, because we feel it's very important to have geography in all of our history courses as well. Comparing and contrasting, all sorts of, again, skills that they're going to use later on. And then our 3rd category here, citizenship, is being an active participant class. This one deals more with behaving in a positive manner. And then just because we feel it's important to meet deadlines and set deadlines and all those things, completing things in a timely manner. So that's what generally what a history PBGR document would look like. And then one other one, I just chose an elective course just because it's very different from history, so I chose the psychology and sociology PBGRs. Again, we still have the 3 categories of social studies, skills, and citizenship. But what we've done is looked at the themes of the course and just adapted our PBGRs to that. So as broadly as we can really kind of tie this into the entirety of the psychology and sociology course. So the effects of society on a person's life, understanding the effects of child development, biological functions, brain and neurological systems, causes and effects of nature versus nurture, the big picture question in psychology, and then understanding motivational factors behind behavior. And so with these proficiencies, we can go through other smaller indicators, but we can apply all of the lessons to that. And then our skills are somewhat the same. There are a few that are a little bit different, basically looking at psychological journals, articles, and documents as opposed to primary source documents. Yes, Jack?
I'm presuming that under these proficiencies are a little bit more detail.
Yes.
I mean, and understanding of the effects of society is a little soft.
Right.
I mean,
This is the easy user version, so that students first want to see the letter grade more than anything else.
Yes.
And then, did I get a 3 or a 4?
Yeah.
And so this is how we can apply that. But we absolutely have indicators that are
break that out a
subdivisions
little
of that.
bit.
Yes.
Okay. 'Cause, Donald Trump has an understanding. I'm just not sure how good it is.
So. Yes, Mr. Fine.
If I could take you back to the beginning of the world, so to speak, can you tell me what kind of films are being used in 20th century American history through films?
So the 20th century history through film class it's a world history class, but we do American films as well. And so, for instance, what that class starts with is looking at the effects of colonial empires on indigenous populations. And so the theme there, so we generally look at 4 films in that first unit. The first is one called Michael Collins, which is about the Irish revolutionary who brought independence to Ireland, but also was the inventor of urban guerrilla warfare. So essentially, terrorism to get one's point across.
Well, okay, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Okay,
And
sorry.
you don't have to name all the
Okay.
films. I just have some concern about whether or not you're using junk from Hollywood and commercial films and that kind of thing. And then there's always the question of documentaries, because documentaries are not quite documentaries very often, and they're done from a particular point of view.
Absolutely.
Sometimes.
So we have a combination. Some are Hollywood, some are independent films, several foreign films. I think it's important for students to read subtitles and also see other perspectives. We use some documentaries as well. But with each film, in addition to analyzing the history, we also look at director's perspective. It would be very similar to looking at point of view in a historical document. We want to know, well, what is the director's point here? And so, for instance, if I can mention the Irish Revolutionary one, it's very pro-Irish as opposed to British, and so we look at, why one would be over the other. So it creates great discussion, as well as it brings, from what I've gotten from feedback, to the dinner table conversations that students are not normally having with their parents about history. So.
But also, I think that in all of our classes, something that is really important, especially, in the last 4 or 5 years with the term fake news coming out, is having our students be really aware of bias and really aware of perspective and really aware that even a news article is going to have some bias in it, because if something's left out of it, it's not the whole story. So even I think a Hollywood film is going to have some, not that I'm showing a bunch of Hollywood films, but that a Hollywood film would still have value because you can critique it based on what you know and then dig deeper to find the facts. Because if my kids leave my room with nothing else, they should know that everything is biased and they need to really search for the truth.
Well,
and
but
search
then
for facts.
that's not entirely a history course, is what you're saying.
Well, Psych and Social is an elective course, so it is 20th century history through film. So it's not one of your world history or your U.S. history that you're required to take. It's an elective.
But they are learning a great deal of history in that course.
And learning topics that they wouldn't necessarily learn in the overview courses that we offer.
And the kids that choose to take that are the ones that don't necessarily learn it through a primary source or a secondary source or the traditional bookwork or lecture that you might get in one of the other courses. They're going to get a lot more, and their brain is just, it works that way better. It's a way to differentiate for learners, too.
I hear the students taking the film class while I'm teaching my class, and there's always very involved classes. They're always very engaged in it. You can hear the reactions to the films in my room.
Okay.
I appreciate the enthusiasm you have teaching the course. I also appreciate the skepticism that Mr. Fine has about whether or not this is sort of the evidence-based stuff that we associate with social studies, determining what's real and what isn't in a social, in a a human dynamics environment, to be fancy about it. So there may be future discussions about the and questions about the intellectual rigor of that course, because I've heard other people ask about whether or not that just how deep that was. So it's out there.
We've had to we when we created the course 10 or 12 years ago, we submitted documentation on specifically what the course is covering and discussing, just so that colleges look at it as it's not a blow off 12th grade class.
It's not a sports team course is the question. Yes.
Right.
I, as a history major at Harvard, am really impressed, and I wish I was going back to high school. Because I very much appreciate this level of using something. What is it? If you're studying a British history and you read Shakespeare, you have to know that there is a bias involved. And similarly, when you're studying, Saving Private Ryan, you are looking at very up close and personal battlefield stuff. But where does it come from, and how do you look at it? And it is analyzing your own biases within. And you have to do the same thing if you're reading a very dry U.S. history text, because even very dry U.S. history texts come with incredible bias. Kudos to you and your department. I am impressed. I did enjoy my time at studying history here as a Bells Falls student, but I wished I could come back.
I think we have the opportunity for you to audit.
One of the things that I also want to leave you with is coming back to the AP topic. One of the ways AP teachers become really good AP teachers is to go off and essentially work for the College Board in grading those tests. And two of the folks that we have here do that on a regular basis. And Justin has actually moved up the ladder there, you might say, to more of a supervisory. He's done it for how many years?
Over 10. Last year I created the rubric for one of the essays that was nationally graded.
Yeah. So, but that serves them well individually, but it also serves the students well coming back, have it, as a professional development experience, assessing those papers. I would say even beats hand down going off to an AP conference on how to teach AP whatever. So
right, when you read the amount of essays, and Kristen could attest this as well, that we do, and that you see common mistakes that students make, and you bring that right back to the classroom, you get a real good understanding for the rubric and what the expectations are, and how important it is to read and understand what the question is asking. Because what we found before I took part in College Board activities was I just assumed that, well, if my students did poorly on this question, it's probably they didn't understand how to supply evidence. But really, a lot of the times what we find is that kids misinterpret a question, or they misinterpret the intention of a document on something we call a document-based question. So as Chris said, it's a really invaluable experience that we bring back to the department to help us help our students succeed.
I'm guessing there are a lot of schools where 50% of the social studies department goes off and does that assessment. So,
nice job.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to offer sort of a perspective of a parent who has children that are either here or coming up here, and the offerings of the social studies department is a really strong factor in discussions of parents who are considering whether or not to send their children to BF or to a different school. And the academic possibilities that are offered here, and offering an AP class at the freshman level draws a lot of parents to say, I want to look at this school and give it a consideration that they might not have several years ago. And so I just want to say thank you from a parent perspective. It has made a difference in my children's lives and other parents with kids that are similar. So thank you. Thank you.
Any parting questions for us? We'll give you the rest of your meeting back if not.
Nice job, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Very nice.
Before we resume the meeting, Chris, you had something you wanted to talk about the
I can actually
new
add it
board
right onto my
members?
superintendent's
You want to put it in
report.
there?
Yeah.
Perfect, okay. So we're gonna move on to reports. Superintendent report.
So as always, I included my report in the board packet, but there are a few things that I do want to bring attention to. As you all know, the Judge Mello, who was overhearing the Act 46 delay, did decide not to award an injunction. So we are in the process, I am in the process of working with school boards. Schools boards are in the process of working with their legal counsel in regards to moving forward or not from forming the Wyndham Northeast Unified Union Elementary School District, would be Athens, Grafton, and Westminster. So we've been working on that this week. I think it was important to bring that to attention. Also, one of the other, some of the notes that I took out of the House and Ways Means Committee, 76 out of 115 school districts reporting their budgets to the AOE. Spending statewide is up 4.1% compared to the forecast of 3.24. But based on what they're saying here is they will have more results now that the budgets have been finalized to get probably more accurate numbers of what the education spending looks like in the state. One of the other things I wanted to bring attention that was worth noting was that the River Valley Tech Center, Scott Farr, who's the superintendent of the River Valley Tech Center, worked with Bells Falls, Two Rivers, Green Mountain, and Black River to come up with, submit, it's called an Act 189 CTE pilot project grant. And within that project grant, what it is, it's intent to coordinate, fashion, and to expand, grow current middle school programming, increase in pre-tech program throughout the region, and leverage natural connections to career pathways and existing curriculums to create a regional collaborative computer science pathway in support of local economics development. And so, and utilize an alternative approach to regional career and technical education funding, which supports students' access to career centers. So that was a $40,000 grant that was awarded. We were the only region to submit it to the state, so we got it. So I wanted to thank Scott Farr for all his hard work in putting that together, and we're going to continue to work on that. The other part I was going to hand out tonight, but after looking at it further, I had a few more things I want to add to it. Is now that we just got through reorganizing, is kind of put all boards, some critical points and responsibilities that board members have, and kind of condense it into one little packet. Everything from the roles and responsibilities to conflict of interest, all the stuff that we can, encounter on a regular basis. And some of the other topics, and I'll take them from a number of resources. These aren't anything that I'm recreating. I'm just literally cutting and pasting input from different resources, so we have them all in one packet. We all have the same information. Some of those areas that I'm thinking of continue to put in there would be, for instance, board members need to be clear that they have no legal authority outside the context of the board. Board members must assure that schools are well run but not run them. Avoiding conflicts. general info, such as board members will be familiar with and adhere to those provisions of the Vermont education law. Board members will do nothing intended to give false impression that he or she has an independent authority to make decisions or take action outside of the school board meeting. I'll include the little kind of flow chart that is out there, and I think it's just a matter of that. You know, it's another year. I want to make sure that we all working from the same information. But if there's something else that you might want included in that packet as a board member that we want to share amongst all of us, please send me an email. Just the topic, and I can pull that information from different resources that we have. But like I said, I was going to pass it out tonight, but I want to add a little bit more to it and give anyone else who wants input and what may be included. I'll also include the procedures we put together for, you know, making sure that we have the board packets ready in time and the board minutes and stuff. That way it's all in one place. So thank you.
Thank you.
There's a question?
Yes.
On the technical education alternatives subtopic there, I would want you to be aware anyway, and I don't know, maybe you already are participating in, there's a program that Hinsdale High School is working called ELO, or Educational Learning Opportunities, and it has, Hinsdale's kind of heading it up for New Hampshire, and they are doing a fantastic job on a local senior project / career-based learning program, which is designed for all students, and has created this wonderful dynamic where local businesses are competing to be mentors and competing for the quality of senior projects. My business was involved in that last year, and where the student brought a cow to the high school and, you know, did a palpation pregnancy diagnosis for other students with ultrasound in front of all the other students. And the fire department had somebody taking apart a wrecked car with the mechanism, and another student built a house for their family. And it's a senior project with a carpenter.
Those are senior projects on steroids.
Yeah, it was senior projects on super steroids. ELO is the acronym for it. I think it's facilitated by the fact that the Hinsdale is operating a bit as its own little entity, and, you know, not a prosperous community, but a somewhat tight-knit community that is, you know, dragging me in from the Chesterfield area where my office is, but pretty neat. So keep ears to the ground about it.
It's interesting. I think I remember Scott Farr actually talking about that, but you know, I'll bring it up again. We're supposed to have follow-up meetings, but interesting.
I think it was written up in Saturday's Reformer actually as well. I just happened to glance at that.
Great.
Just remind me of it.
Well, thank you.
It was last year that my business was involved in it, and so it seemed to be clicking along very nicely.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Principals
My
report.
turn. Quick hitters, winter sports are done. Spring sports, believe it or not, actually have begun. Today was the first day for spring sports, and it always starts a week early for baseball for pitchers and catchers. So they get a week of practice, and then a week from today, everyone else starts. So pretend like there's no snow out there. Spring sports are upon us. What is also upon us, before at least we come back together again, so I want to make sure you're aware of Mary Poppins. March 29th, Friday, March 29th, 7 p.m. Saturday, March 30th, matinee for those of you that aren't night owls, and then 7 p.m. for the last showing on Saturday. I just have to say, and I appreciate having been involved in many of these over the years, come on out. It will be, as it always is, one of those that leaves people walking away going, wow. So our students, both on the stage, behind the scenes, and in the pit orchestra, do a phenomenal job. Don't miss it.
It's very impressive how the student orchestra aligns with the students singing. It's no easy task, but they're doing a very good job on it. Very impressive. You know, watching them go from day one to where they are now. Incredible.
If you don't blink, you might see the superintendent out there.
And the principal.
Not in the pit orchestra.
And the assistant principal.
Dates again were the 29th.
Friday, March 29th, 7 p.m. Saturday, March 30th, 2 p.m., 7 p.m.
Thank you.
And it is also one of those district-wide affairs. Little ones to big ones. Katie Iman and Nick Pelton do a great job of getting folks out and actively involved. The last thing I'll call to your attention is, and you might have heard us mention this before, but in February we normally have our half day to welcome in the incoming 9th grade class for enrollment meetings, personalized meetings, student, parent, staff member. That staff member is their homeroom advisor for the next 4 years, but that's where course selection happens and a lot of other important information is shared. We normally do it in February. The weather got in the way of that, so that's going to happen Wednesday. So that's also an FYI that Wednesday will be an early release day for us. We're kicking out our kids at 11:30. Not too many of them are disappointed by that, and then making the space available for signups. That's all I got.
Thank you. Edie? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on, Edie. I'm sorry. Jack
Chris,
is.
what kind of effort are we making to get to kids that are not going to the our middle school? Our
I put this guy on that.
Well, I was going to say because
And
I would like it if we could make sure that we make a special effort.
So our approach to that, and John has been doing this for years, is to reach out to anyone that knows anything about an 8th grader that lives in Athens, Grafton, Rockingham, and Westminster, and they get on a spreadsheet. And then we capture all the information we can about that, and then all of the mailings and all the information that goes to the middle school students goes to everybody on that spreadsheet. So sometimes that means we contact Westminster Center School and say, give us your list of all of your 6th graders from 2 years ago. So it's that level of outreach. And then John also will go to the nights that occur at some fairly close middle schools. Weathersfield, as an example. They'll do a high school night. And for the past few years, we've set up a table there. John wasn't available to go this year, so we sent a different teacher to go plug the place.
We had it covered, and also this year, hopefully the superintendent and I, definitely me, and if he doesn't have another meeting at that plan, we're gonna go to Black River and present.
Well, I guess I'm just want to make sure that that students that have gone to other middle schools get at least a phone call from one of you directly.
Yeah, they get more than that.
Yeah.
They get phone calls and letters and whatnot. But we're also reaching out in other places too.
And whatever we can do to be supportive in that, as your local reps, happy.
Those students are scheduled for a meeting on Wednesday. That's usually when we find out what their thinking is. So some of them show up for those meetings and some of them don't, but we go even so far as to put them in a homeroom.
Okay.
So.
Edie?
All right. Well, financials. It's still pretty early to figure out where we're going to end up at the end of the year. We currently have 3 tuition students coming from Weathersfield. We're looking right now without, the springtime studies, without really knowing how the SU is going to end up, or the high school. We're looking at about a $30,000 surplus, and that's like super conservative. We've spent about 63.5% of the budget this year. At this time, last year was 61.25. But if you remove the HVAC system, we're only at 57.33%. So we're actually behind what we had spent at this time last year, but it's still early, but we don't see any issues. Chris does a good job keeping track of his budget, so we'll kind of wait and see where we end up. But so far, so good.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any committee reports? Haven't met with any
Don't really have
committees
any
that I'm aware
committees
of. Okay. Unfinished business. Negotiations updates. Who wants to give that? Deb?
We, at this time, we have now, I think we went in the bubble last time to talk about where we were.
Nothing.
Our next, we have a team meeting on the 20th, and then a meeting again with the teachers union on the 25th.
Okay. Act 46 update?
Pardon?
Jack?
46.
Act 46 update?
The Act 46 update, I think Chris summarized some of it. There's going to be testimony in Montpelier. Oddly enough, I'm going to be one of the folks testifying. Are you? Who's the other person? No?
Cheryl Charles.
Cheryl's going to do it. And in terms of other items, I'm aware that Westminster, when they passed their budget, made a specific proviso to the effect that that was not money to be spent on a unified district. So we are having those kind of issues. My town basically voted to reaffirm unanimously their opposition to 46. I'm looking forward to the April 12th reorganization meeting with some trepidation and possibly anticipation of a tremendous lack of participation, but we will see, and we'll see how that works
Jeff,
out.
you said April 12th? 10th. I think it's April 10th, yes. April 10th is the organizational meeting.
It is the scheduled date of the organization.
Scheduled date of the organizational meeting of the merged district.
Right, and that
which some action could be taken, for instance, say to recess it or something of that sort.
That is one of the rumored things that may occur. We don't know yet. We have gotten advisory from the state saying no, don't do that. It was a rather extensive piece of guidance. I didn't bring it to this meeting because I didn't know it would come up in any detailed way, because we won't be directly affected, but it certainly will be brought up at the SU meeting and at the Grafton, and I would guess Westminster meetings as well.
Okay, thank you. Paperless meetings.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I can, I guess I'll start the lead on this one. I know we've had this discussion and we had it at the last meeting, but we tabled it for this meeting because we have new members here. I know last year we did at some point, and I'll be darned if I can find the minutes, but we did vote to go paperless. So that being said, we do have the opportunity, board members, through your emails, the tablets here provided by the high school, to log into your email and into your app, and the agenda and everything is attached to the drive there. I know if you do want paper packet, to go stop at the central office and pick it up prior, to the meetings. I just think for the sake of the sanity of the board chair, the administration, that we need to make a decision on, which direction we're going, because it is for the administrative assistant, Secretary Sue Stack, it takes some time to come up with printing these and putting them on the drive and everything, and it's added work for her to have to do it. My thing is, I think initially the conversation started with, cost of sending packets to the board members' homes because of postage. I think that's initially where it started, is to kind of save a little money there and to use the resources that we have. So, my opinion is I would like to just see it go paperless the way it's been.
Yes, Jack.
Paperless is fine, but I'm aware that in these discussions we have had issues with some folks not being conveniently accessible to electronic communications, and that is an issue. And I'm also aware that we've not always had the same material easily available online as we have had in the packets. I think I think this is a great something we should strive for, but I know that that the supervisory union is reorganizing their web system to make it more accessible, make the material more easily accessible to, especially if you want to go through the archives of anything. Finding stuff would be nice. It's a little hard right now, and these are all part and parcel of what needs to be done. It might be something that we could ask a supervisory union committee to help clean up, because I think that all of the districts would like it to be electronic, but are finding it frustrating at the moment.
So I've thought a lot about this, and I think that there's some members that are really good at getting it out of their laptop and finding all the documents, and you know, I like to make notes. So I'm still printing it off because I like to write on it. I like to be able to go back and look at it and see what we talked about. So whether I print it off or the school prints it off, I end up with this because I like it in my hand. And you can't make any. My understanding is I can't make notes on those. Those are documents that are in there. You can't. They're not your documents.
There
really.
is, but they're not. You got to know what you're doing to do it. But I don't
So-
think we're there yet.
And I think, I don't know if we can come to an agreement, but I think there's a few members that are really comfortable with paperless. And there's a lot of us with gray hair that maybe aren't. And if that's, you know, I don't know what it would hurt to have Sue have a list of the ones that need it mailed to them. Doesn't have to mail them to the people who aren't going to use them.
And I know based on this conversation that we've had since I started, that's why I kind of put in kind of come up with a protocol that we're all using to prepare the board documents that need to go into the board packets. I think I've taken into consideration a lot of the stuff that's been spoken about around the table. How accessible is it? I've started to go in and clean up the Google Drives. It's getting there, but it's not there yet. As Jack said, we are looking at a website, a platform that's going to be ADA compliant, and hoping that it'd be more user friendly to use. Lately, I've been putting the board packets in there as PDFs, because sometimes PDFs are just much easier to. It's all in one packet. You might have to do a little more scrolling, but it's all there. You don't have to click between pages and stuff. So I think we're moving in the right direction. But it seems like it's something that the board has to talk more about in regards to getting consensus on.
I just want to mention the difficulties of those who live in that last mile.
That I can indeed pick up my email or go to the website actually of the school, of the district, and read the agenda
and the minutes, but only on this little screen, which is not as readily available as this here. So, and we do not have internet at home, other than this, and my job is actually on the road. I don't have readily access to the internet. I'm not in my veterinary office long enough to read the school stuff there. So, there is a difference between whether one does have readily access or not, and I would appreciate the accommodation for my geographic disability.
If the accommodation is you bringing these here as you've done, thank you very much. If it was mailed to my house, but it would have to be printed out, of course, and mailed to advance time enough to allow it to get to my house by Friday or so I could have it.
And if it's still accurate by the time you get it.
Yeah. Right. So I understand the challenge with that, but it is complicated to read the minutes so that you can approve the minutes at the beginning of the meeting when you're handed a paper copy at the beginning of the meeting, or you've had to struggle on the little screen to read the minutes on there.
Just want to point out that those are the actual nature of the participation in the school board activity.
Jack.
The BFU operates under, or at least thinks it operates under, the alternative governance model that we talked about, whether or not the state thinks we did or not. And one of the things that calls for is getting all the boards together in sort of grand convocations. We have talked about using one of those as little more than instructional seminar for all board members to know how to use Google Docs, to know how to find stuff on the web page, to know where to look, to know how to organize, to know how to write on a PDF. And I would strongly urge the various board chairs and the SU board chair with the superintendent to get together sooner rather than later. Maybe we can schedule that for sometime this spring so that everybody can get on board and use these systems effectively. And then we can figure out what we want to do after that.
But if the SU doesn't pay for it going the last mile, then that doesn't allow it to happen.
Maybe that will be part of the discussion, Stephen. We can have those are all questions we can have. But let's find out first. Make sure everybody knows how to use it.
And from my standpoint, I'm just going to keep going as business as usual and bring a few packets for
Pretty much
people.
that,
And
yeah.
some people have been coming by the office, and that works out well too. But I think until we get this settled, the best way to do it, I'm just going to continue with what we've been doing. And
I simply want to say, I'm fine for paper. I'm sitting here all evening fidgeting because I have nothing to shibble on. It bothers me greatly. So I forgot to print a piece of paper, like an agenda, so I can write on something. But however, I don't need it now. We're at the end of the meeting. However, I have to say we are in the 21st century. The tone is at the top. We have our students' considerations of conservancy and all that sort of thing. We're killing trees here. I have piles and piles of paper from years and years of boards, and yet we do not convert. We have done it for this one, but shall everyone bring? It's no consistency. Shall I bring? I can't get these from here. I have to bring my own laptop to an SU meeting, or a committee meeting, or any other thing. The municipality that I am at has not made that determination to spend the money on some kind of tablet form, and people aren't bringing their own. So we're still printing tons and tons of paper, but. This is the legacy we're leaving our children, and this, and I'm on a little pedestal here talking about this, but the reality is on this platform is that is a change we want for our children, and we need to make it ourselves. So we have some hurdles. We need to find a way around them.
So I think for the people who can't get them, I was trying to read it on his phone at 10 o'clock at night, that we
They're bigger.
still have...
It's like your pocket.
Yes,
Takes
Colin.
phone calls.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Put it in my pocket.
Again, I'm okay with whatever direction we're going in. I just think this board should make a decision and put this to rest because
You have
it's
the pen anyway.
coming up all the time. So I think we need to make that decision.
I'm perfectly happy with this being technically paperless, so as long as somebody kindly brings some paper.
And I do regret left the last farm at 6 o'clock. I did not have time to go to the SU to pick it up beforehand or to read it in advance. And it is that reading in advance, which is I can if it's an agenda item or something important, I can generally read it here, but minutes can drag on. Or like financials, it's hard to read on that.
So I would like to make a motion that the Bellows Falls Union High School Board go paperless with accommodation. That's my motion.
A second. Oh, we don't even need a second.
Oh, we don't need one.
We at a point with okay, yeah.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor for the Bellows Falls Junior High School meetings to go paperless with accommodations.
Can we
That's
add a
pretty
friendly
vague.
amendment with training offered to those
With
who
future training, I'll accept
With future training
amendment.
to be offered to all
be offered.
members.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
March 11th, 2019, we made that decision. So remember those.
With accommodations.
With
Colin.
accommodations, yes.
And training.
New business for discussion and action. Board agenda preparation.
I covered that in my report. I'm
Okay,
gonna
I
include
thought
it
you
in
did.
that,
Page 41 and 42.
that packet, so we're all set.
Perfect. Approve moving funds from the capital reserve fund for the air handling system.
Do you have a actual figure for them, Edie?
Yes.
So here's what this figure is going to be. So we finished off the air handling work. Minor tweaks here and there as we continue on with that work. The budgeting for that, a significant portion of that was from a reserve fund.
Right.
So what we have to do is you have to approve the transfer of those funds from the reserve fund to this year's budget to pay for that. Otherwise, that $30,000 surplus that Edie mentioned will become a $300,000 deficit.
That sounds like a bad idea.
Can I have a motion for that?
Well, she's got a she.
Edie's got a
We,
figure.
it's going to be a motion to move a certain amount of money.
$313,586
from
the capital reserve fund to the general fund to cover the cost of the HVAC repairs and maintenance.
Madam Chair, I'll move that motion.
There's a motion on the floor to approve moving funds from the capital reserve fund for the air handling system with the amount of $313,586 to cover the cost of the HVAC system. Is there any discussion?
Just reminding me, if you will, this is work that we have already approved and
Yes.
it's already underway. This is not
This is not new work. This is
Okay.
work that is done, and this is dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
Okay, just because
Because you also approved this as a funding source already.
The reason I'm asking is just because the new Buildings and Grounds Committee has not met yet, therefore I want to make sure this
Right.
was already stuff
This
we had
is
talked about.
old
not
news.
something new. Okay, thanks.
New business, but old news.
If Don was here, he would,
Yeah.
speak to the subject.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Do we have any appointments?
Nope.
Director's comments. Brenda.
Welcome to the new member, and congratulations to you.
Steve.
Two comments. First is, I would just like to make note of the fact that in all the years I've been going up to River Valley Tech Center, it's a lot of years. Chris Pratt is the first superintendent who's put his nose through the door and attended the meeting. And I'm under the impression that we might see him up there again. And I really applaud the fact that you're getting out,
Thank you.
doing the
Nice
work.
job.
And there's one other thing I want to mention, and I'm really sorry that I didn't bring this up at our annual meeting. That is that it can be difficult to fill 10 seats at a board table from time to time. And Catherine James walked in here and filled that last vacant seat. And there was quite a bit of recruiting done. It's a pretty interesting commentary on community involvement that we waited so long, but Catherine showed up, Catherine did the work, and I just want to mention that I appreciate the fact that Colin did the recruiting. That's my comment.
I just want to welcome the new board members, and I'm looking forward to this new board coming together, and thanking you guys for giving me the opportunity last year to serve as chair. It's not an easy job, but it definitely was a learning experience, and I enjoyed it. And to thank my mother, Catherine, for stepping up and serving part of last year on the board as well. And thank you, David, for those kind words, and I will pass that along to her.
Thank you.
Steve.
Nothing. I'm just excited to have joined this board, and I look forward to future meetings.
I'm personally delighted with the additions to our board. I know both these characters fairly well, and I'm really happy that they're on because I know how they've contributed in other scenarios where I worked with them, so that makes me happy. I do want to note that our budgets did pass, but yes, there were votes against it. I think this is important because I think it says that we need to both explain what we do better. We need to listen better, because I'm not sure that always happens. One of the things we might want to do is make a real effort to communicate through particularly the local weeklies that we have, what goes on in our schools, and some of the decisions we are making, and whether that's something that we do via a report by our administration or we do as individual board members. I think it needs to get done, and that should be a priority for the coming year.
We're supposed to have 10 members, we have 9. Is that correct? We're missing a member. What town are we missing?
Rockingham. Priscilla.
So
She just happens to be away. It was a
Oh,
pre-scheduled
okay.
time away.
Okay, that's why there's no GC. Okay. All right, so I have nothing other than that. That's
Okay, thank you. Date of next meeting. You have that on the tip of your tongue, Chris?
To my calendar, I can tell you.
April 8th.
Or John can.
So we're going to have April 8th and
April 8th. Date of next meeting is April 8th,
Yeah.
6:30 here. Meeting is adjourned at 8:25. I'll try to shorten those up next time.